As you can see, there's a bullet wound here.
Al Jazeera's investigative unit is infiltrating the illegal supply chain of rhino horn, from the kill in Africa to the sale in Asia.
你们看了怎么样呢？你大概如果能确定大概什么时候过来交易？
It's a huge amount of money. It's worth more than gold or platinum.
Rhino horn is now one of the most profitable commodities on the international black market, driving the slaughter of an endangered species.
But it's not the rangers that are going to make the ultimate difference between the survival of the rhino or not. It's whether we address the organized criminal syndicates.
You're going to pay cash for the rhino, and your guy's going to come with the money, no?
We expose the dealer in South Africa who claims to have powerful friends.
Organized crime can only flourish in a corrupt environment. And until we can fix our corruption here, we will never ever stop the poaching.
We go inside the Vietnamese village that's a thriving hub of wildlife trafficking.
Here, the lady of the house comes in and drops this big rhino horn on the table.
You are dealing with very powerful people, people in influential positions in government who are buying up and using rhino horn.
And we investigate the explosive claim that even some close to the Chinese president are part of the poachers' pipeline.
我上次那个习近平过来，他们带了很多，他们买了很多。
In the heart of Johannesburg is the Chinatown area. Our undercover team is searching for a product that's been illegal to trade internationally for 40 years.
那像那个犀牛角的话，如果我想买一个，到哪里去买？就是南华那个分有专门是卖的，这每天都有。
现在就一定要找人联系人，我什么时候要货，要什么东西，人偷偷要卖，很多那奇奇怪怪的人。 他们特别爱那个什么保护啊，那个什么那个有点很危险，麻烦，你知道吗？
We believe this man's name is Wu Jianke. He runs a Chinese restaurant. In his house, we took pictures of his own collection of products from endangered species. Ivory chopsticks, pangolin scales, abalone shellfish, and rhino horn bracelets. All illegal. But he says horn is the most risky.
说难听一点，你给我弄假的，我随时都可以弄死你，随便的，真的是随那个弄死他，都有这个可能。你就如果你要的话，我就问一下那个。
He gives us directions to a dealer he knows.
到那里顺德楼下，有一个叫木艺居，那个卖木艺居那里。木艺居。对。不赶快店里面。你熟人介绍的。
We're told his name is Chan. He leads us through several locked doors to his storeroom.
现在这种交易都在安利交易，不在里面交易。啊，东西现在太敏感。
这是什么东西？也是机甲。这个是前脚还是后脚？
前脚，只有前脚会退，后脚到这边。囤货只有我这边有囤，其他人都没有囤货。
A complete front horn can weigh 6 kilos. The stumpy back horn more like 2. A set costs hundreds of thousands of dollars.
还有老虎牙齿，4个牙齿，老虎牙。
这里怎么会有老虎牙呢？
怎么没有？挂的。
但是100%是真的。
我绝对不是假货的。
Many visiting Chinese consider horn in particular the ultimate status symbol to acquire in Africa. Our investigation will reveal it's a view that goes to the very top of Chinese society.
Someone behind me? Go. Man, it's dangerous, man.
A full moon in South Africa's most famous national park. It It's known locally as a poacher's moon. When it lights up the bush, the slaughter peaks. This is 20,000 square kilometres of park with about 400 rangers to protect its most vulnerable species. About 25,000 rhino are left across Africa. 6,000 have been killed in the last decade. The biggest single population, about 9,000, is in the Kruger.
Because even if there's poachers, then they can hear the noise and run away.
We're out with a team of park rangers and police to log a crime scene.
The vultures are scared of the sound. You see, they're running away. There's the carcass. There's no lion. We're going to give the police a chance to go there and inspect the scene first. See if there's maybe any exhibit that are lying around. They must first mark them.
What kind of exhibits?
Like bullet point, maybe like shoe print of the suspect.
This carcass was spotted by rangers days ago, but with 2 or 3 kills a night, they've only come to inspect it now.
He has found something, a spent cartridge.
There's a gaping hole in the head where poachers hacked out the horns. One bullet, one night's work, one fewer of an already endangered species.
This is a hotspot. That's where we lose most of the rhinos.
Nicholas Funda is the Kruger's chief ranger. The park's eastern edge borders Mozambique. The poachers attack from both countries.
I think they cross up north, they drive down all the way. That's where their killing spots are.
The set of horns from this adult rhino can sell for up to $250,000 on the black market. The poachers get about 1/10 of that because they're just villagers at the bottom end of a criminal chain.
The poor people, we deal with them in the park, some of them, they don't own the firearms. They are hiring firearms. It means they work for someone.
In legal terms, poachers are known as level 1s. Above them are the level 2 gangmasters who organise and finance the kill. They sell to level 3 dealers who export the horn. Level 4s are the importers. And finally, the consumers, the level 5s.
We will never, ever win this fight if we focus only on the level 1s and forgetting the other levels that are not walking and coming to pull a trigger into the Kruger National Park.
It's a hierarchy of crime extending far beyond the Kruger.
These are organized crime syndicates, but the challenge is these people, you don't find them in the park, you don't find them with firearms, you don't find them with their rhino horn. You find someone is sitting in Vietnam or in China. What are the chances that you can link that person to a rhino that has been killed in Kruger National Park? The chances are very slim.
While the carcass rots under an African sun, the horns are destined for Asia. Cut up for jewellery, ground into medicine, or kept whole as a sign of status and wealth.
And it's so emotional because it seems as if by year 2020 we're not going to have any rhinos left.
On the edge of the Kruger is the city of Nelspruit. Our investigation is concentrating on the key mid-level dealers who facilitate the trade between Africa and Asia. Like Guang Jianguang, a Chinese businessman who lives here. He runs a massage parlour and employs some illegal workers, but he gets around the rules easily. We've been told he buys horn from fresh kills. That makes him a level 3 trafficker.
而家西牛角好多人就攞來做雕刻，成個西牛角咩花咩咁啊擺喺屋企送起係啊，或者送起，即係自己即係點講有錢人冇地方花錢咁咪擺喺度。係係咪買嗰啲容易咧？嗰啲嘢咧我幫你玩，但係咧你千祈唔好嗰啲客人啊咩過嚟我有個西牛角你太難呢樣個人啊嘛，嗰邊交錢嗰邊交貨，差館即刻過嚟㗎啦。 繳咗你個貨筆就講，仲要拎你100幾廿萬嘅。喺深圳，呢度應該會好靚嗰啲就有，好靚嗰啲就有。靚嗰啲咪濕咯，你要曬乾咯，掉清掉都好犀利㗎。啊！早排有個黑鬼，我支咁長我過嚟。係前面嗰隻紅前面嗰隻，後面嗰隻經常咁短嘅啫，前面嗰隻咁長。 现在有没有那个西叫做前脚？前脚多少钱？
Guan leaves a message for one of his contacts and says he'll get back to us with an answer.
Well, I think rhino horn has certainly become a commodity that's worth more than gold or platinum. You are dealing with networks that span the globe.
Julian Rademeyer is an author and analyst who's exposed numerous wildlife trafficking rings in South Africa and Asia.
These are very, very sophisticated business operations whose sole purpose is to obtain a product, get that product to market, and they're utterly ruthless at doing it.
He's been tracking events at a game reserve west of Pretoria. It's one of many privately owned farms which keep rhino. The owner is a Vietnamese tycoon who was arrested in South Africa, convicted of rhino horn smuggling, and ordered to be deported.
I do find it a bit odd that someone with a conviction for rhino horn smuggling, that someone like that would be able to obtain permits to keep rhinos on a farm.
Julian's suspicion is that the reserve Voi Game Lodge may be stocking rhino to be killed for their horn. One of the regular visitors to Voi was a Vietnamese man who was arrested in a police raid at his home in the capital, Pretoria.
They found close to a dozen rhino horns. Some of them were buried in the back garden. A number of them were from fresh kills. The bases of the horns were still damp, still wet. And they also found a vehicle that was parked in the garage that had a specially made secret compartment in it for transporting rhino horn. Someone in the house was busy cutting up a rhino horn because a rhino horn was found stuck in a bandsaw in the garage.
We've discovered that just hours before the police raid, the house was visited by one of the Vietnamese who runs Voi Farm. His name is Van Tan Chu, and he calls himself Beckham. We've spoken to people who know Beckham and his Vietnamese colleagues and suspect them of involvement in poaching. One source can't be identified for his own safety, so his words are read by an actor.
The Vietnamese guys would drive around other private farms with rhino and take photos. One night, they went out in their truck and came back in the early hours. Their clothes were blood-stained and there was blood in the truck. They changed and ordered staff to wash the vehicle. You couldn't see what was inside it. Then they drove to Johannesburg, to a Vietnamese restaurant. There were several late-night journeys like this.
Beckham has reported several incidents of rhino killed on his own farm. The last time was shortly after our visit.
The poachers killed one rhino outright. One died later. They hacked the horns off the third one while it was still alive. The poachers seemed to have plenty of time. There were no staff on the farm. Beckham had taken them all out for the night.
There are also tigers at Voi. Beckham has shot one, but the farm claims many others have died from natural causes.
At the back of the farm, there's a building with gas burners and big pots. They cook the bones to get the gel and make what's called tiger cake. They find people to carry it back to Vietnam. Sometimes they just post it back. A dozen new tigers have just been delivered.
Exporting tiger cake is illegal, but in Asia it's valued as a medicine and a status symbol, just like rhino horn. We have another meeting with the Level 3 trafficker, Guan. This time he gives more detail on how he stays in business despite his criminal past.
開自花啦，我以前啱啱嚟南開自花俾人哋捉咗，開庭啊呢樣嗰樣咁啊有案底攬。而家清緊案底，叫人清緊。
點清咧？
咁就去司法局清咯。
如果我
俾錢清咗啲清就大嗰啲。
俾嗰啲利是就可以清㗎啦。
清。
哇！咁又俾幾多錢先清到咧？
好平啫，幾千蚊，我可以約到，可以即係我可以還到。
就還
呢個南非國安部部長個國安部部長 David， 我屋企客人嚟嘅。
He's talking about help at the highest level, a special contact, David Mashlobo. He was a senior official in the Nelspruit area until 2014, when he became a government minister.
每個星期啊，或者一個月起碼嚟2次，我間店按摩啊咩嘅，咁好熟嘅。
Minister Mashlobo controls South Africa's intelligence services, including the State Security Agency, which analyses organised crime. Guan shows photos to prove their relationship.
呢個國安部部長，南非國安部部長。
個大佬嚟㗎，係一個大佬，呢個都係。
就係從咧，我哋客人咧以前嘅住響呢個 plane 嘅。
呢個女仔係邊個？
我啲美甲師。
今日嘅見個朋友咧，你介紹你嗰個安全部部長啊嘛。佢都冇咩做咩生意咧？
佢老婆做啫，佢唔會做生意。佢老婆要有咩大嘅項目啊？佢老婆出面啦，佢就唔會出面。即係好多南非好多高官人啊嘛，老婆做生意，老公做高官。有咩就食佢關係咧？我老公係邊個？做官嘅咧，永遠唔會做生意嘅。
Those trying to combat the criminals behind the rhino trade say their efforts are hampered at every level by corruption.
There's huge profits to be made. They are able to buy their way at political levels, into police, into customs. So they undermine the whole law and order structure to get their way.
Nigel Morgan has spent decades in the shadowy world of intelligence. His foundation, Focus Africa, now gathers information on wildlife traffickers.
We were invited to the Kruger National Park to set up an operations centre on the rhino problem when it was at its height. Our operations led to something in the order of 61 arrests and a database of 2,603 individuals profiled. We felt strongly that we need to go and disrupt the level 3s, the buyers, and get into the pipelines.
2 years ago, his intelligence team closed in on a suspected buyer, a Chinese national known as Eric. We've seen confidential police documents confirming his identity as Ma Shupeng.
He was operating out of a warehouse near OR Tambo, which is the international airport in Johannesburg. So he's a professional trader in endangered species.
Working with the police and the Kruger Park, they set up a sting operation, offering Ma a genuine rhino horn.
You're going to pay cash for the rhino. Your guys going to come with the money now.
An intelligence analyst involved in the deal described what happened.
The deal was set up to happen at Emperor's Palace Casino Complex. There's hotels, there's gaming. The agent booked 2 rooms. One room would be where they would do the deal, and a second room right next door would be where the task force would be waiting. The task team arrested both individuals in the first bedroom, and police members that were situated on the gambling floor also arrested the third individual.
So 3 people arrested, having taken possession of horn and having paid for it. It sounds like it should have been a slam dunk conviction.
Indeed, it should have been.
But the police documents show that didn't happen. 1 man was fined, the other 2, including Ma, walked away unpunished.
Something seriously went wrong after those Chinese were arrested because they were allowed out on bail and they disappeared. It could, of course, be a coincidence, but I think these arrests took place on the 22nd of May, and the 3rd of June we received a letter terminating us.
Their contract with the Kruger was cancelled without explanation, but Nigel Morgan suspects why.
There was concern that because we were funded by American money, we were somehow a threat to national security.
Who had said that?
It's a record in a minute. Obviously, I think it was a disgraceful decision.
The minutes are from the Parks Department, but we've pieced together a link beyond that to the Ministry of State Security. A new minister took office just a month before the contract was cancelled. He's repeatedly accused organisations which receive overseas money of undermining national security. He's the same minister, David Mashlobo, that the Level 3 Chinese trafficker considers a useful contact.
Well, we know there were elements within the police and political elements that were getting scared, that we were getting too close to some people higher up the line.
David Mashlobo's spokesman told us the minister wasn't involved in the affairs of the Kruger National Park. He denied receiving services from Guan, going to his house, or any relationship with him. And he said his wife didn't do business on his behalf. In part 2, we dig deeper into the political and diplomatic connections that perpetuate the trade, including the astonishing claim that horn and ivory was smuggled out of Africa by some of those close to the Chinese president.
我上次那个习近平过来，他们带了很多，他们买了很多。
Our undercover team has already met a Chinese trafficker who offered to supply us with rhino horn. His name is Guanjiang Guang. Now he reveals he has high-level contacts in official positions in China who can help smuggle the horn.
你想做喺呢度帶貨翻大陸，我都有路。帶到翻北京，北京機場有人直接話你坐翻去向南非買關，跟住你就攞個行李號，你直頭翻 send 翻俾北京呢邊幫你直接攞你走啦，你唔使攞。
係唔使我哋交我哋攞。
直頭佢幫你攞出去。 北京呢啲人咧就係工做嘅，非常幾夠力嘅，即係應該係啲富二代嘅，佢哋專門做埋嗰啲生意。哦，嗰啲你知嘅頭，你邊個都冇。
北京就一定冇問題，
絕對冇問題。
Guan stays in contact using WeChat, the Chinese messaging service, to discuss the supply.
而家全部冇貨，捉得好嚴啊！捉得好嚴啊！7點中間嘅我都經常見啊，早2年啊，經常有啊。我聽日答覆你啦，聽日答覆你。我而家幫你聯繫緊。
He comes back to say there are no full horns available, so we should buy in China and he'll arrange it.
早晨啦，早晨啦。呢邊大陸呢邊有福啦，福過嚟啊，好貴啊，貴到個價錢。佢因為佢帶翻大陸有一定嘅風險，佢收唔貴㗎，所以我都建議你喺大陸買。
So we contact Guan's man in China. He's in the southern province of Fujian. In the criminal supply chain, the dealers selling imported horn are known as level 4s. The seller here calls himself Yang. Before we met, he sent us these pictures of a back horn for sale.
有没有看过那个图片了没？
样子上面我看，图片看上是没有什么问题。
啊，这你们关键的就是要今天要看的主要是看那个真假问题是？
对，看看东西啊，这真假啊。
价格方面没问题吧？
价格就是关主那边讲是十几万吧。18万。
直接在我们吃饭看吗？还是？
可以啊。
The asking price on the day, $60,000.
真的225斤。
过了几年了，这个为什么味道还这么重？
一直都有味道。
一般味道慢慢的都去掉了。
一直都有味道。
就等于这里以前切过一段是吧？对，后来又切过一段。
没有，就是直接它接下来就这样。你们看了怎么样呢？你大概如果确定大概多少块可以？
We didn't buy, and we didn't contact him again.
See, he's got the dart there.
Back in South Africa, we're off to shoot a rhino. Not to kill, but to rescue.
They'll chase him until he's close enough to the road, then they'll dart him. They give him a small dose to keep him up on his feet, because you just can't move a 5 6 ton animal.
Hello.
About 1,200 South African rhino were killed by poachers last year. Hundreds more were wounded. This is the impact of the continued demand for horn from China and Vietnam.
When they get shot, they run. And so they wander around with all these bullets in them all the time.
Alison Thompson runs a group lobbying for tougher action on wildlife crime. They also raise money for mercy missions like this.
Just going to block his ears as well. So that also makes it a bit easier for him, so he's not so responsive to sounds from the outside.
This rhino was shot twice by poachers. After surgery to remove shrapnel buried in his leg and shoulder, he'll be back in the park by nightfall.
There we go. Keep going, boy.
In a nearby paddock, another survivor, left barely alive after poachers hacked out its horns.
We've lost 67 since 2010.
So we're losing 10 a year.
They normally come in a team. They normally have guys out on the roads who are the runners. Within 24 hours or 48 hours, they're out of the country, you know.
And the poacher does not know who he's handing over to.
Yeah.
Through the roof, just through the roof.
Get out.
One more. One more, come on.
If the poachers had succeeded in butchering this rhino, there's a very good chance its horns would have ended up in a small village in Vietnam for sale on to China.
The Vietnamese nickname of the owner of this house is Uncle Rhinohorn. So that tells you something about his involvement in this trade. The woman is the lady of the house, so she's the wife of Uncle Rhinohorn and very much involved in this illegal trade.
Pauline Verheij works for the Wildlife Justice Commission in Holland. They've created a powerful dossier indicating the Vietnamese government is directly complicit in perpetuating the trade. They filmed secretly in a Vietnamese village and shared this footage exclusively with Al Jazeera.
And initially she brings in a bag of some ivory products. The Chinese buyer is examining it.
This is the end of the supply chain, where the level 4 dealers sell to the level 5 consumers.
You can see that they're not crazily interested yet. The mood really changes when the big rhino horn is being brought in. Here the lady of the house comes in and drops this big rhino horn on the table. I think they're mostly interested in the weight and the price. And she will respond that it's $29,000 US per kilogram.
For centuries, Nika village was famous for wood carving. Now those skills have turned it into a hub of wildlife trafficking.
We found several shop signs there which says ivory, rhino horn, tiger, and very clearly advertising these items for sale. A place like this cannot exist without local authorities being in the know and facilitating it.
The inner part, you can use macam cup.
See this one.
A year ago, the Dutch team handed their confidential dossier on over 50 local dealers to the Vietnamese government. They hoped the authorities would close down the criminal networks operating only 20 miles from the capital, Hanoi. But the business simply went underground.
The open trade has disappeared, so you won't see shops openly selling ivory and other illegal wildlife products anymore, but they are still selling, because we still track these people on social media. So, I'll just open my WeChat app here and go to the account of one of the key sellers in the village. All her advertisements show the weight or the size of the products. The whole rhino horn on a scale, or a rhino horn tip, I should say, but to think of that, that's one rhino dead.
The sellers use WeChat to reach China, their major market. But buyers still flock to the village to shop direct.
As you see, we're now turning from that shop area into a side room where our interpreter pulls out a huge ivory tusk from under a bed. I think it's important to realize that these people are here completely risk-free, the Chinese buyers. So they come in, they choose what they want, and at an extra delivery fee, it will be delivered to them at their doorstep in China.
And have you seen how it actually gets across the border from Vietnam into China?
Yeah.
Can you show me that?
Footage with one of the people that do the smuggling across the river.
The traffickers use another village near Kalong River, which is the border with China. Then it's a short hop across.
Now we're already landing on the China border. So that's how easy it is. What we were told is that this woman who organized the smuggling, she is the one that bribes Vietnamese customs to make sure they look the other way.
Okay, so can I buy a bag of powder?
The impact of the trade in this one Vietnamese village is enormous.
In 1 year, this criminal network trafficked a value of around 43 million US dollars.
And how do those dollars translate into dead animals?
We found that around 580 rhinos was involved. Almost half the amount of rhinos poached in South Africa every year. And that really goes to show you the impact that this criminal network has on poaching globally. And it also makes us very motivated to make sure that these people are brought to justice, because that would really have an effect on poaching in South Africa.
The Wildlife Justice Commission is making one final effort to force the Vietnamese government to take action on their evidence.
We have sent it to numerous ministries and individuals within the Vietnamese authorities, and the reaction has been almost unanimously silence. We've given them every opportunity. Now it's too late.
So they've organised a panel of legal experts to meet in the famous Peace Palace, a public hearing to assess the dossier.
It's not putting them on trial. We're not a court. But what we are is presenting to the world all the evidence that we collected to show what's out there.
But you are trying to embarrass them into action.
I wouldn't say embarrass them, but we're trying to stimulate the international community to get the government to enforce its laws.
The people that are buying rhino horn in Vietnam are some of its top CEOs, some of its most senior politicians, people who are government ministers. For them, this is the ultimate status symbol. It's something you can display. It's something you can give as gifts to buy influence. There we go, avoid game lodge rules. Enter this predator camp at your own risk.
We've found those same kind of high-powered connections to Voi Game Lodge.
There he is, going very slowly.
Where?
He just went behind that second clump of trees.
Got him.
This is the private reserve, which Julian Rademeyer suspects is trafficking rhino horn and tiger bones. Voi is owned by a Vietnamese tycoon, Michael Chu, convicted of possessing rhino horn. It's run by Van Tan Chu, known as Beckham, suspected of complicity in poaching. Visited by a dealer caught in a raid with over $1 million worth of horn. And there's a fourth link to the Vietnamese embassy in South Africa. One of their former cars was found in the police raid, and embassy staff have spent time at Voi.
There are also figures including someone who appears to be a military official who has ties to the embassy. That's a photograph that was taken of him with a hunting rifle posing at the farm.
We've identified him as Win Xuan Hung, who served 2 years at the embassy. He's also shown in functions at the Vietnamese ambassador's house.
The Vietnamese embassy in Pretoria has previously been implicated where shipments of rhino horn are suspected to have been smuggled out using the embassy's diplomatic bag. So it certainly raises a red flag about the knowledge of the Vietnamese embassy.
There's also a picture which was quickly taken down from the internet, but obtained exclusively by Al Jazeera. It shows the ambassador himself, Lê Huy Hoang, at Voi Game Lodge. The Vietnamese embassy told us they work to raise awareness of wildlife conservation and the law. They didn't respond to the specific allegations about their connection to Voi Game Lodge. Other embassies have also been linked directly to smuggling horn.
They were violent, they were aggressive, they threw stones at my car.
So you don't want to comment at all?
That's what happened when Julian Rademeyer tried to confront the North Korean embassy in South Africa about his latest report. Their diplomats have been caught in the act.
A North Korean diplomat and a taekwondo master were arrested in Mozambique and found in possession of rhino horn, over $100,000 in cash, and had no explanation of how they'd ended up with the rhino horns.
Neither man was ever prosecuted. It was one of almost 30 examples he found of embassies across Africa abusing diplomatic privilege to smuggle horn and ivory. Almost every case involved either North Korea, Vietnam, or China.
I think it's an area of grave concern. In most cases, police who've tried to investigate those cases have been told to back off. In none of those cases did anyone serve jail time. They were all let go. It is essentially the perfect crime. Government officials in Africa are unlikely to allow police officials to search the bags of Chinese diplomats or Vietnamese diplomats simply because of the economic and political hold that China has over so many African countries.
China is South Africa's biggest trading partner. That relationship was on show in December 2015. The presidents of both countries met for a forum on cooperation, which ended with a gala. It's a visit which has produced the biggest revelation of our undercover operation. Wu is the restaurant manager we met in Pretoria, who introduced us to a dealer selling horn and ivory. He says he acted as a tour guide for the visiting Chinese delegation. And he claims some of the president's people wanted illegal souvenirs.
他们当时过来的时候，习近平他们那个代表团买了很多，买很多对吧？买很多。但是那边代表团买的话，他去哪里买的呀？我那时候他们来的时间比较长，所以我就把它象牙，他们有的小饰品，那个信用酒也有，但是不是他们买不多，那个象牙他们买的最多。那个印章买了很多啊，筷子啊。 那个笔筒啊，小挂件呐，很多那个手链呐。
To confirm his involvement with the delegation, we tracked down other people who'd been there at the time. This man was one of several cooks we spoke to who catered for the China-Africa summit. We met him in China. He wasn't involved in anything illegal, so we're protecting his identity.
200多个人啊，他是又是那个演出的啊，保安啊，还有电视台的呀，还有那些政府官员来的很少。这上面有回家的记录吗？
小五认识的人多。
小五他关系不一样。
那代表团那是买了很多系列奖了，那是买脱销了吧？
系列奖我这个不清楚啊。你看没有？反正我知道，老二他不是来看这么多中国人，是肯定的，他不去，不知道他去哪里去搞的那个象牙、筷子啊，那些吊坠啊，卖了2天。
很几月你有？
他说他再也不敢卖了，他说他再也不了。
谁呀？
Strengthening the allegation is the fact that Chinese presidential delegations have been accused of exactly the same thing before. On separate visits to Tanzania by Xi Jinping and his predecessor, local traders say their entourages went on ivory spending sprees.
How many kilos? Many kilos. Like hundreds or thousands? Yeah. 100? No, many kilos. Thousand kilos.
Then and now, travelling with the president apparently meant it was easy to smuggle the goods home.
他说他回北京，他是怎么回去？他说怎么拿回去？除非你非常，我们说广东话说非常黑仔，除非是非常运气差。他一般都是不会弄什么打包，你就拿个机票托运，他就马上给你带上飞机去了。我就随身包，他也没什么检查。然后呢，他就带回到北京，下了飞机，他会让你拿出来，你会自己去拿出，让你拿出来那个行李，然后你就会把它拿出来放在手包里，然后就进去，一点问题都没有。
We asked the Chinese government numerous times if they wanted to respond to our revelations. We heard nothing back. Both China and Vietnam are signatories to the global ban on selling horn and ivory. But as our investigation has shown, their politicians, diplomats and delegates may sign one thing in public and buy another in private.
So the challenge is an extraordinary one, and the slaughter simply shows no sign of abating.
Can the world afford to lose species, to lose human life? If the answer is yes, then they don't care for other human beings outside China and Vietnam.
Well, I don't think the governments are committed at all to stopping this. If they were, they would be speaking out against it, and they haven't. If every single person doesn't fight, it's not going to be there for our grandchildren.
I think it's incredibly difficult to only fight it within the parks. Sanctions, blacklisting, travel bans, there are all kinds of mechanisms the international community has.
It is essentially the perfect crime. You have a diplomatic bag that can't be opened, it can't be searched, no prosecution at all.
Unless we can convince the Chinese and Vietnamese to stop this trade, help us stop this trade, we're not going to win.